All matter is made up of atoms. All organisms are made up of matter. Carbon is a very unique element in that it comprises the structures of living organisms. In fact, all organic molecules have carbon in them. What makes this possible? Let's take a look at carbon's chemical structure properties. You can see that carbon's atomic number is 6. This means that carbon has 6 protons, 6 neutrons, and 6 electrons to keep an element relatively neutral overall. All of these parts are important to carbon, but the number of electrons is especially important when identifying carbon as an essential element in life. That is because carbon has 2 electrons in the innermost orbital around the neutrons and the protons, and has 4 valence electrons. The number of valence electrons demonstrate the electronegativity of an element, which is basically the affinity for valence electrons to complete the orbits of total 8 valence electrons. As carbon is halfway there to complete that orbit, its electronegativity is in the middle. Since the electronegativity is in the middle, carbon is able to bond with many different elements via 4 covalent bonds because it is willing to share its electron with other molecules since it would not necessarily gain or lose significant number of electrons. Other atoms are able to bond with carbon through single, double, and triple bonds depending on that atom's electronegativity. This versatility of carbon is important to the diversity because it makes itself available for many different elements. This is called tetravalence and it contributes to its structural diversity of molecules with carbon including tetrahedral, bent, and linear shapes. Carbon can also form chains that serve as skeletons for most of the organic molecules. The chains can vary in length, bond types, and shapes such as branched or rings. Groups of atoms called functional groups are often attached to that carbon skeleton, and these components are responsible for chemical reactions and unique properties of molecules depending on their arrangements and numbers. So what are the organic molecules that carbon atoms make up along with other elements that are so vital in life? They are carbohydrates, proteins, lipids, and nucleic acids. Cells are able to synthesize and break down products through the process of dehydration, synthesis, and hydrolysis. Dehydration is the process of extracting 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom in order to bond 2 different molecules together. Hydrolysis is the breakdown of a compound by adding H2O to it. These are the 4 organic compounds that living things require for their various functions. They all have certain structures that are made apt for their individual function. The source of energy for living things is carbohydrate. Carbohydrates are often long matrices of carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen called monosaccharides, disaccharides, and polysaccharides. Living things use carbohydrates for quick energy because they are able to break off a segment of carbohydrates easily through the process of hydrolysis. Proteins are complex macromolecules that carry out a lot of functions in the body including 1. Growth and repair, 2. Signaling from one cell to another, 3. Defense against invaders, and number 4. Catalyzing chemical reactions in organisms. Proteins consist of polypeptides or polymers of specific amino acids. Because of the diversity of carboxyl groups, amine groups, and a variable that each protein has, cells are able to build thousands of different proteins. Each protein is a particular conformation that determines the functions and the roles of the proteins. They are primary, secondary, tertiary, and quaternary structures. Primary structure is a chain of amino acids that cannot have any mutations due to the direct correlation between the function and the sequence of amino acids. Secondary structure is either an alpha helix or a beta pleated sheet. These are usually fibrous proteins that make up the hair and other fibrous structures. Tertiary structure is the 3-dimensional shape of a protein that is formed according to very specific reactions that take place for folds and bends of the structure. This contributes largely to the function of enzymes that catalyze reactions because they are able to take in 3D substances and carry out various reactions. Quaternary structures has more than one polypeptide chain. Lipids. Lipids are a diverse class of hydrophobic compounds including fats, oils, waxes, and steroids. Lipids consist of 1 glycerol and 3 fatty acids in chains. These chains allow for it to store the energy that organisms need. The functions of lipids are, number 1, structure of a cell, and endocrine. Phospholipids have structures of a hydrophilic head and a hydrophobic tail. This forms the membranes of cells commonly referred to as a lipid bilayer membrane. These naturally occur in water because the hydrophilic tails naturally tend to avoid water. Nucleic acids are mostly responsible for containing hereditary information of organisms. Each of the nucleic acids is composed of 1 phosphate, 1 5-carbon sugar, and a ribose or deoxyribose. The phosphates are able to stack on top of each other through phosphodiester linkages, forming a chain. The double helix form a DNA, which allows easy replication during mitosis and transcription during protein synthesis because it can unzip and zip again. The long chain of RNA and the structure of rRNA contribute to the easy translation because tRNA is able to attach onto both of those structures. In biology, function dictates form and form dictates function. The organic molecules discussed show that clearly.